What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the third installment of the budget kitchen remodel. Look at that. Now that the paint has dried, it looks real nice. And don't let me forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. And if you're returning, thanks for supporting the channel. And let's go over what we're going to do today. So in this video, we are going to start working on the backsplash, the tiling that's going to go from here all the way wrap around to there. So if you haven't actually seen the first two videos, I'll put a link right up here that you could check out the first two. The first video we did demolition, and then the second video we painted the kitchen. So let's go down to the garage and check out all the stuff that I bought for today's project. Starting with the Thinset Mortar. This is a 50-pound bag. This is what bonds the tile to the wall. And then here's the tile that I got. It's a nice square subway tile. These were actually on clearance. Got these at 22 cents a piece, which is, I believe that was 50% off. So all three boxes, there's 300 here. I did the math and I figured that I needed about 280, so I just bought 300 just in case. You know, you always want to have a little bit extra, but they're such a good deal, I just bought extra. So it's always good to have. Anyways, we're also going to be replacing all the light switches and the electrical outlets just because they are old, yellow, dingy. So if you buy all your electrical outlets in bulk, that will save you money. And all these faceplates, these are real cheap. And then bought the outlet in bulk also. That saved a lot of money. But they come in 10-pack, and then this one I believe, I don't remember how many in this pack. I can't see where. I believe there's 10 in here though. But it was definitely cheaper to go that route. Then up next we have the grout. We got unsanded grout, so there's no texture to the grout. And then we bought a trowel just to spread the mortar on the tiles. And then this is, forget what it's called. I think it's called a float for the grout. So you put the grout over the tiles and then this spreads it. And then you'll also need a sponge for the grout. That wipes the grout. What am I trying to say? The sponge wipes the excess grout off. You'll see once we get to that point. And then a small bucket and two large buckets to mix the mortar in. And then some tile spacers. And then a mixer. And I think that's about it. So to start off, I think what we'll do is we will pull the stove out of there. And then we'll pull off all the electrical outlet covers all the way around the kitchen, and then we will start pulling off this old janky backsplash that they thought was cool back in the 80s or 90s or whenever this was made. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Well, there you have it. We got everything removed. We got the cabinet removed. Mounted the hood. That's where the hood's going to be. Just so that I know the level of where the tile is going to go. So we're going to do the tile all the way up to the top of there. And then all the way down to the countertop. So, to start tiling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take measurement from the cabinet over to there, to the corner of the wall, and then cut a piece of wood that's going to go along that so that I can keep the same height of the countertop all the way through to make it level. So let's do that. So here's the piece of wood that I cut. What I did was I pre-drilled, just because it's a thin piece of wood. I didn't want it to crack or anything, so I pre-drilled a few holes in it all the way up and down it, and then I just had some screws laying around. There's some deck screws to screw it to the wall. So also what I did was I took my piece of wood and I looked down it to make sure it was nice and straight, and I picked the best side, marked that good, so I knew which side would go up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go so that I'm even, flush with the countertop. Throw a screw in there. Attempt to do this one-handed. Okay, and then make sure you're flush with the countertop. Okay, and then now we want to throw a level on it so that we can level it out. Throw a screw in the other side. Ouch. Okay. Looks like we're level right about there. So that looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to put a few more screws in there, just so I know that it won't fall, because they're not very sturdy. They're just into drywall, so they're not holding all that tightly. So if you're worried about it later on, you can go back and patch those holes after the fact. Alright, so I know in the beginning of the video I talked about what I bought, but I'll give you a little rundown of what I'm going to need to start doing the tiling. So we have some 1/8 inch spacers for the tile. That spaces out the tiles so that they're nice and even. We got the mortar, and then we have the bucket, and then we got our trowel, the float. Actually, we don't even need the float right now, but we'll just need the trowel, and then we have this mixer that you put into a drill so you can mix up the mortar. So we'll read the instructions, figure out what, how much water and stuff we need to put in this, and then we'll mix it up, and then we'll start putting this stuff on the wall. Also, I forgot to mention a tile saw. That helps tremendously. This is just a cheap one I picked up at Lowe's for a previous project I worked on. I think it was like $89. It's less than $100. It works pretty decent. I mean, for the money, it's definitely worth getting if you have that in your budget. So after reading the instructions, it says to use about 6 quarts per 50-pound bag, but I'm only going to use half because this is quick setting mortar, and I don't know how long it's going to actually take for me to do it. I'm not very experienced, so I'm going to just do half the bag, so half the water, so 3 quarts to the half of the bag, mix it up, and then let it sit 5 to 10 minutes, and then we should be good to go. Also, you might notice that I'm just going to do it right here in the kitchen. I don't advise this, but it's a construction zone here, so I'm not too concerned about it. Everything's going to get cleaned up and replaced, and yeah, so if I make a mess, I don't really care. But if you care about that, you should probably put down some tarps or do it in your garage or whatever you need to do, because it can make a mess. So I forgot to mention, you can always Google this, but all I got is a measuring cup that has cups on it. So I just Googled how many cups in a quart. It's 4 quarts, or no, 4 cups in a quart. So I know how much water to put in here. And you want to put your water in first and then mix the mortar in afterwards. And you want to mix it with your drill and your thingy-majigger for 5 minutes. fun part. You're just going to get some of this mortar up on your trowel, and then you want to just put it on the wall. Get it nice and thick, and then do a good scrape like that. Get your 1/4 inch lines of mortar, and then you're going to want to take your tile and just spread that up on there. Get some good coverage on it, just like that. And then you're just going to want to place it right up on the wall. That's what we have this here for. Let's try and get rid of some of this excess mortar. Okay, so you just take your tile and then just put it right up against the wood that we got there, all the way up against the wall, just like that. And then give it a good push, a good seat in there to hold onto the wall. And there you go. There's your first tile. Do the same thing. Spread it up on there. Then you take it, put it right up on that edge. Probably need a rag too. I'll have to get one here in a second. But you put that right up there, push it down, and then what you want to do is you want to use these spacers to put right in between these tiles, just like that, to keep them equally spaced. And then you just do that all the way along, and then you just stack it up, and then once I do the first row, then I'll show you how to do the second row. So we have our first row done on the back. So when I explained earlier about putting the mortar on the wall and then on the tile also, that's wrong. You want to put just the mortar just on the tile, and then you won't have this big ass mess that I started out with. That was one thing I learned. And then another thing that I learned is make sure that you have a small enough trowel, because my trowel is it's way too big and it's getting messy. It's getting all over my damn hands, and it's kind of annoying to have to wipe everything every damn step. But anyways, we are going to cut up a couple tiles for the corners, and then we'll start on our second row. So what I mean is you want to stagger the tiles. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a half tile here, so we'll have half a tile, and then we'll be able to take, here, let me show you real quick. Then we'll be able to stagger the seams, so it'll look like that. So hopefully that makes sense. So we'll cut up a couple pieces, and then we'll keep going. To our first obstacle, we have to notch out the tile to fit around the socket. So what I did was I took the case, or the cover, and I stuck it on there like that, and then I traced around it with a black pen so that I would know where it's going to cover. So when you notch the tile, you want to make sure that it's at least inside that line so that it's covered by the cover. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the tile and then place it right up on there. So I've cut my piece, and then you just want to make sure that it's going to fit in there good. Fit in there within the lines that I drew on there. It looks good. You also want to make sure you're avoiding this piece here, because you don't want your tile to protrude or look weird. It's the third day of tiling, and today we are going to grout. But first, we're going to go through and we're going to take all the spacers out. And I would recommend saving them if you plan on doing more tiling. So I just use a Ziploc baggie, and then you can save them and reuse them. So with grouting, I got the unsanded grout. There's sanded and unsanded. Sanded basically has sand in it and it has a texture. So I think for a kitchen backsplash you really don't want that texture, and you can kind of see it. So this will be a nice smooth look and it'll look kind of like caulking. But realistically, it's pretty much the same deal as mixing the mortar. You just read your instructions and then you just apply it. But I'll go over that here in a second. I'm going to mix this up and then get grouting. So before you start grouting, you're going to want to go through and just take a damp cloth and wipe everything off and get any, like that. You know, this little bit of stuff off of there. Any contaminants. So I'm going to do my best to try and show you this. Using one hand, but basically you take your float, got the grout here, scoop some up, and then you're just gonna apply it to the wall just like this. You're gonna want to go diagonally across the tile like that, just so you're filling in the gaps, and just do that through the whole wall. This is probably the easiest part of the whole deal. So after you've done that and you've gotten all the cracks filled, you'll let it sit for 15-20 minutes, and then you'll come back and you'll wipe it off. So it's been 15 minutes. I got this sponge. Just gonna wring it out. Just want to get it nice and damp, not too wet. And then you just start wiping. And you can see how it's starting to look. You're gonna want to rotate your sponge, so once it gets a bunch of crap on it, then you just go over to your bucket, dip it in there, squeeze it a little bit, get some of the grout off of it, and then go back and just keep wiping. And as you can see, it comes out real nice once you sponge it. So before you sponge it, and then after. So there you have it. So I'll go ahead and keep going on this. I don't want to bore you with any more time lapses. And then we'll come back and see how it looks. Well, as I was editing the video, I forgot to do an outro. So here's the outro. Let's take a look. I got everything all grouted and looking good. And then after all the grout, you know, wipe it off. And then also, after you got it all wiped down and let it sit for a day or two, you're going to want to put a sealer on there. So it seals it all up and makes it all good to go. Oh yeah, hood's all installed. Got the duct going out and everything. Got all the electrical hooked up. Got the light. Got the crazy fan. We're all good to go there. Anyways, here's a total for what I spent in this video right up here. And I'd like to say thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video where we're going to do, I don't know, stay tuned. I think we're going to do the countertops next. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can follow along, and peace out. Thanks for watching.